Hey everybody, just getting my paints together here for this little project. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be painting, dry brushing this little witch. I know that Halloween's over, but I didn't get her in time to do her for the holidays, so I thought I would paint her today and just have a little bit of fun after Halloween fun. I didn't get very many trick-or-treaters last night, which was super disappointing, so bummer. So I am using these 4 colors here. I've pinned the colors that I used in the comments. And I've already base coated it. So for my supplies, excuse me just one second. For my supplies, I've got a lot of different kinds of brushes here, mostly flats and filberts. I do want to talk about brushes just for a minute because we are dry brushing. So if you guys aren't familiar with dry brushing, that is exactly what it sounds like. You're not going to be using a wet brush or water on our brush. So the brushes that I generally like to buy and purchase and use are these Simply Simmons brushes. However, they, from what I understand, have been discontinued, and so I'm having a very difficult time finding them. So I do have some other brands that I like. These Artist Cloth brushes from Michaels. They're pretty pricey though. I've also found these Snap brushes by Princeton at Jerry's Artorama, I believe is where I got these. But basically with dry brushing, what we're looking for is we're looking for this very stiff bristle. These are called hog's hair brushes. And I have them in every shape, size, and whatever you can imagine. These are the Simply Simmons brushes. And I get these from Michaels, but like I said, they're not available anymore. So I like to just keep a bunch of different sizes and shoot with me because I never know, which ones I'm going to be using. So I generally just keep a whole handful next to me. One of the brushes that I absolutely cannot live without for dry brushing is called the Princeton Scrumbler. This is a number 6. It also comes in a number 2, but it works fantastic on things like tiny little moles, little tiny round things, apples, pumpkins, small things like that. So to get started really quickly, let's just talk about what we're going to do here. I'm going to dry brush this. I've already base coated her, and like I said, the colors are pinned in the comments. And I'm going to probably give this lady away after I'm all finished painting her. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to get this fully dry brushed today while we're doing this. So I'm going to start out with, I'm going to do her face first, just because it's really, her face is pretty dark, so we'll lighten it up some. I'm going to start out with the number 4 short filbert. So if you're not familiar with filbert brushes, they're sort of flat on the top and they round down like almost like a rainbow shape, crescent shape. And they work really well when you're working on round things such as cheeks and stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and load up my brush with the sour apple. I'm going to remove most of the paint out of there. And if you have been following me for a while, I do a lot of pan pastels, but I always start with dry brushing. That's always my first step. I don't spend a lot of time dry brushing because, I know that I'm going to be using the pan pastels when I'm finished. So dry brushing for me is something that I don't spend a terrible amount of time on. And I like to use the filbert brushes on things like the cheeks, the chin, anything that's got a seriously round shape. You want to have a round type of a brush. If you're using a flat brush, you're going to have a hard edge and your transition color. You're not going to have a very smooth blend. So if you're using a flat brush, your line's going to stop right there and it's going to be very sharp, hard edge. And I'm sorry the lighting is not so great. Right here, I've moved my light around several times trying to get the best light. But using a filbert brush allows for a very nice, smooth transition of color when you're trying to achieve a shadow. And that's what we're always trying to do with dry brushing. A lot of people start out painting their piece black, and I used to start out doing that too. Sometimes I will, if there's a lot of detail and I don't want to take a lot of time base coating the piece, then I'll do it black. Or if I'm looking for a very scary kind of dark look, black would be great to base coat. But if you want a lot of dimension and depth in your piece, then you really should stick in the same family. You know, you're wanting to do three, always thinking in terms of threes when you're doing art, when you're doing painting. You need like a base color. What is the color of her face going to be? Well, it's going to be green is what I decided. So I know I want a green face. So I need three total colors of green, right? I need my base color, which is this. Then I need the color I'm going to dry brush, which is just a shade lighter than that. And then I need a third color, which is what we're going to do our highlights with. Well, the third color, I'm just going to add a little bit of white to my dry brush color, because then I don't have to buy 3 different colors of paint. If you want to buy 3 different colors of paint, that's okay, you can do that. But we do a lot of paint mixing in our classes. That way you guys spend less money on supplies and you kind of learn the principles of color mixing. So I generally will have 2 colors when I start, 2 shades of green in this instance. Okay. Again, with my filbert brush, I'm going to be picking up just the highlights of the roundness of her face. Not like a flat brush would, because I do want a little bit more color in the shadows of her little cheeks there. But I also don't want it to take up the whole entire, I don't want to lose all the dark green that I base coated with. So I'm gonna just go over those high spots. Again, we're always looking for a smooth transition. That's why we're using a filbert brush versus a flat. In terms of how I work, I generally don't use flat brushes unless it is a flat surface, such as this hat. There's no texture here. I know I'm going to need a hard highlight edge around my edge, so I'm definitely going to use a flat brush in that scenario. Here, I wouldn't want to use a flat brush because this is not a flat surface. This is a round surface. Her cheeks are very round. Pick up a little bit more paint here. You'll know if you've got too much paint in your brush because you'll end up with some shiny spots and some streaking. You don't want that. So always err on the side of caution when you're removing your, starting out. I generally like to go to a place that has a little bit of texture. So that way, if I do have too much paint on my brush, it doesn't go in the flat spot. It kind of goes in some of those textured areas first. So let's see. I'm going to set her down here for a second. I wish my lighting was better right here. I've moved my lights around so many ways this morning trying to figure out how I could get the best lighting, and she's just so dark right now that it's really hard to get. I'm in a room with no windows, so it's really hard to get a good lighting in here so I apologize. Basically, we're working on the tops, the highest spots. When you're doing dry brushing, you're always thinking about where is your light source coming from. For me, I always generally work from the top. My light source is right on top here. If you had a piece that was like, looking that way at, say, the moon or something, then you would want all your light to be on the front of the character where the moon is, if the moon's over here, and you would want everything back here to be dark. So, thinking about your light source really is the most important thing you're going to do before you start. I'm not going to worry too much about getting, if I get green on the black or on the orange for the most part. I'm not really going to worry about that because I'm going to go back and I am going to go back and use pastels to do my shading and stuff. But if you just were going to stop after this point and not do any kind of pastel work, then you would want to be a little bit more careful about getting your colors onto other parts of your piece. So you can see, like, you do not need a lot of paint on your brush at all. It's going to go a really long way because you want it to just barely pick up the color. And I promise this is going to get a lot lighter, you guys, when I get a couple of coats of this light green on here. I'm sorry that the color isn't so great right now. Okay, so I basically mainly want to focus on the tops of everything and leave the underneath side of her face and cheeks, you know, pretty dark. But I do want to always flip around, see how does it look from the underneath side. Like I've got a lot of dark under here, so I definitely need to blend this out some. Now again, if I'm using a flat brush, I'm not getting a nice transition of color. So the brush that you use is very important, very important. I'm trying to look and see if you guys have any questions, you know, please let me know. I posted all the information. I got this piece from Eddie O'Neill. He's in my Facebook group, I believe, and also in the Ceramics Rants and Raves group. You guys can find him there. Everything was shipped superbly, packaged excellently. This piece was cleaned marvelously. However, I did break the top of her hat off when I was unpacking it. That was completely my fault. So I glued that back on, and easy breezy fix, no worries. Okay, so again, here up in the ears, I just want to capture that, just the very tip of the texture, the highlight part. I don't want to go down into the grooves of the ear too much. Okay, I'm going to load up a little more paint here because I do need to go get just a little bit more under the nose and on tops of the cheek. Hope you guys had a nice Halloween. I had a big party at my house. Lots of people came in costumes, and I didn't get very many trick-or-treaters, which was a super bummer. I guess with all the trunk or treats now, people don't really take their kids trick-or-treating door to door anymore. So that was a super bummer. She's already just looking so adorable. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and work. We're always working outwards, right? I mean, whatever you're working on, whether it's the side of the cheek, the chin, I mean, you're always working from the outside in as a general rule of thumb. Anyway, that's what I do because I really, it's important to achieve that nice gradient of color. So if I'm working on the top of the cheek, I'm working starting on the outside and working towards the bottom of the cheek. Okay. Again, using a filbert brush, super important here. Working from the outside in. This is a number 4 brush that I'm using. All right, let's see. She's still, I mean, it's like, doesn't really look like has very much of this sour apple color on her face when I'm looking at my computer screen, but she's definitely got a lot on her face when I'm holding her up here. It's just my lighting is not great. Again, I need some more color on the underneath side here. Underneath side of this, it's very round. So, you know, if you're thinking about your light source, the chin and the cheeks and the nose, they stick out quite a bit from the hat. So they're getting quite a bit of light here. So we need to have the tops of the cheeks, the top of the nose, the top of the chin need to be quite a bit brighter than the rest of the face. So we'll get this layer down, come back and add a little bit of white to my paint, and then we'll do some highlights on here. I generally don't do the eyes until very last, but I painted the white on there just so that I could take the picture for the class. But for the most part, I do the eyes very last because I don't want to have, especially on small eyes like this, I don't want to get color on it and then have to go back and, you know, they're the hardest part. So. So if I get a little bit of this sour apple on the white of the eye, it's fine. I'll go back and touch it up. But, all right. It's looking pretty good. Let me add a little bit more paint in my brush here. Let me look at the questions here just for a second. Do you have brush recommendations listed out on your page somewhere already? Not really for dry brushing, you guys, because like I said in the very beginning, maybe some of you guys missed it, but the Simply Simmons brushes that I use and have been using for a long time are, according to a couple of companies, that Simply Simmons is no longer making this line of brushes. And so I've tried getting them, ordering them at several other places, independent art stores and stuff, because I usually get them from Michael's. They're artist quality level 3 acrylic, oil painting brushes, and they really last a long time. And so I've been using them for so long, and I don't have a recommendation because now I have to find a new brush to use. And that's super aggravating to me because, I don't like to spend a lot of money on brushes, and these are very affordable brushes and they last a long time. So now I have to go the next, at my local store here, I live in a very small town. We have a Michael's and we have a Hobby Lobby, and that's really it as far as art supplies. So I don't shop at Hobby Lobby for personal reasons. And so now I've got to try to find brushes somewhere else. And Michael's, the only ones they have are these Artist Loft Fire Ends brushes, which are excellent, 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 but they are very expensive. Like a number 8 or a number 10 brush is like $22, and I'm just not going to pay that kind of money for brushes. I'm not for dry brushes, because I'm very heavy-handed and I break these things down. Sometimes I look at a brush and it says it's a filbert, but it's a flat because I've worn it down so much. I push really hard on my brushes. All right, so let's go ahead and add a little bit of this top color on our hands. Like I said, if you wanted to have more of a scary look, you could just Basecoat her all black and then do your dry brushing colors on top. But I was kind of looking more for a cute witch than a scary witch. So, plus dry brushing over black just takes forever, and everything just looks dirty. When I look back at the stuff I did, a couple of years ago where everything was black base coated, it was like, oh, I wish I had done color instead. All right, so that looks pretty good. I don't need a lot of a highlight on her hand here. We're just trying to create a little bit of depth, a little bit of dimension on her, these high spots. So go ahead and hit this top of the hand here. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of white for the highlights. I like to do I'm going to do all my greens with this brush because, we're dry brushing, so I can't rinse my brush and go back. It doesn't work that way. So, we're layering colors all the time. Let me just hit the bottom of this nose here. I can see some spots where it doesn't look very uniform. So you can see I'm using, since I use that filbert brush, I've got really nice dark color in all the grooves of her face. So I'm going to just keep using the same brush. I'm going to hit it with a little bit of white. I'm just gonna create a lighter sour apple here. And like I said, I do a lot of paint mixing in my classes. It's just try to cut costs for you guys. So now what I want to do is I want to create my highlights. Okay, my dark green is my base. That's my shadow. The sour apple is the color that I intended for her face to be. Now I'm going to add the highlights on her face. So I'm going to start really on the high spots, top of her cheek, always working from the outside in. Okay, because we have most of our color, our highlight colors can be on the top of her face. Okay, so we're just going to create a slight highlight here, following the roundness of the cheek. I'm going to come up to the tip of the nose, the bridge of the nose. I'm going to do the top of her nose. And again, always working from the middle out, top out, you know, wherever you're starting, because you're not going to get a nice gradient of color if you're starting in the middle and working out, right? Always want to start on the outside and work in. Just following the natural shape of her cheek here. Okay. Come up on the nose here. What we're trying to achieve here is a nice gradient of color. Obviously, on this high spots of her brow bone, we're going to add a little bit of highlight here. I come back across the bridge of her nose on this side, and on the top of the cheek again. Always working from the outside in. I cannot stress this enough. You will hear me say it a lot. Okay. I'm going to hit the top of the side of her nose here, her nostril, and the top of this line in her lip, or her mouth or chin, over here on the side again. Just hitting those high spots. Okay, on the high parts of her ears, we can add a little bit of a highlight here. Okay, and then let's just do the tip of her chin a little bit, I mean the tip of her nose a little bit more, because it sticks out pretty far. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Now I need to do the top of her chin. So I'm going to start at the top. I'm just going to follow that natural shape. We're going to kind of create a rainbow here, half moon shape on the top of the chin. And we're going to be working towards the middle, from the outside into the middle. We want a nice transition of color. No hard lines here. Now, at this point, I can come back and, you know, if I want to paint her moles black or something, then I'll go back and paint those a different base color, and then come back and dry brush those with a smaller brush. Okay, then on her hands, we're going to come down here and we're just going to hit the high spots. So her knuckles, and we want to work against the gradient, against the creating a gradient, but working against the carved line of the hand. Okay, now I think I may want to add just a tiny little bit more white to my brush. I hit the tops of the fingers here because we definitely are getting more light on the top of the hand than we are anywhere else. Okay, and I'm going to add just a tiny little bit more white. I'm going to add a little bit more of a highlight on the tip of her nose and on the tops of her cheeks. So this is going to give me a little bit more of like a her nose is sticking out farther than anywhere else. So. Okay, and then just again on just the high cheekbone here. Okay, and then maybe a little bit right here on the chin. And on the tops of the knuckles again. Okay. Oh, I got out of the camera view, sorry. So I'm pretty happy with that. A bit more highlight here. All right, that looks pretty good. I'll do her socks, later. But I'm gonna rinse my brush out here because I'm all done with green. So hopefully you guys can see her face, looking pretty cute. I don't know if the color really is coming out so much as it's a really pretty green. It's kind of hard to tell in this light, but okay. Bear with me here. I'm gonna grab a different brush. Let's do the back of her cape because the back of the cape is really textured, super fun. So I have a couple different brushes here. I'm going to use this number. Oh, do I want to use a bright or a flat? So if you guys know the difference between brights and flats, a bright flat is a short flat like this. These are both flats. I'm sorry, brights. What am I thinking? And then this is an actual flat brush. So the flat brushes actually have longer bristles, even though the top of the brush is the same shape-wise. So, if you want to use the long-handled flat, I'm going to use it because I want to pick up the texture only. If I use a short flat here, I'm only going to pick up the very top of this cape. If I use a long flat, it's going to pick up the top, but it's also going to go down in my grooves a little bit so that I don't have so much of the dark purple underneath. I do want the dark purple to show underneath, but I also want the light purple to kind of go down into some of these groove lines. So in this case, I'm going to be using a number 6 flat brush. Just trying to see if I have a number 8, but I don't have one. And okay, so I'm going to pick up Purple Pizazz is what we're going to be dry brushing the cape and the hat with. And like I said, I do have these colors pinned in the top. Sorry, I was just checking the comments really quick. Make sure you guys don't have any questions. And it sounds like I'm banging this thing really loud on my table. I promise I'm not. It's just the microphone. So I'm going to go ahead and just start working against the grain, the carved lines of this. Okay. Got quite a bit of paint on there, but because I'm going to be doing a couple different layers, it'll be okay. Because I'm not going to really be going. I'm going to be going into the deeper shades of the purple, but it'll be able to be kind of covered up those shiny spots with a second layer of paint. So again, we're working against the grain or against the texture because we only want to pick up just the top part for the most part. We don't want too much of our dry brush color going down into the grooves. Now you could for sure use a larger brush here, number 8 or even number 10, but I don't have a number 8 and I don't want to use a number 10 because I don't want to switch brushes, so I'm going to do the hat and the boots and the cape with the number 6. because I'm so limited on my brushes, you guys. I'm afraid to, my Simply Simmons brushes are like so incredibly important to me. And now that I know I can't find them or get them anywhere, now I'm just like, trying to use them as little as possible when I'm doing these projects. When you use a flat brush versus a bright flat, it gives you more of like a sweeping gradient on this kind of like a textured piece here. Because you do want to have some color in this, down in this card line here, in this this little valley of the row. If I'm just using a regular flat brush, well then it's just picking up just the very top. I don't want that. That doesn't look realistic. We need to have a gradient transition from one color to the other. That's why, you know, I generally like, I don't know, it's hard because you need to have that gradient of color, and it's not going to be realistic if you don't have that. So again, a lot of color on my brush still, so I'm just going to lightly, I'm trying to just hit the tops. Notice I'm holding the brush in a horizontal position, because if I'm holding it up and down like this, that's not just capturing the top of my texture. That's going to go down into all the grooves and crevices. So your brush selection is important, but also how you hold the brush is important. Okay, once I get most of the paint out of my brush, just going over the top, then I can kind of come back and try to get a gradient of that color by working more, holding the brush, a little bit more pressure on the brush, working it down, away, catching the top, but also catching some of the sides. Again, here on the top of this, I want to catch the edges. Edges are very important for your highlight color. Anywhere that you have an edge, you know, for hers specifically, we have an edge on the hat here. We have an edge on the cape. We have an edge here at the bottom of the cape. These places have to have a highlight, have to, no matter what, because that is the place where those particular spots are getting the most light. Again, always thinking about your light source. Oh, that's a little patch. I didn't even see that because I don't have my glasses on. I'm just realizing I don't have my glasses on. I've been doing this whole thing without my glasses. Hold on one second, you guys. Because when I get to the smaller stuff, I'm going to really need my glasses. The big stuff, not so much. All right. Okay, let's see here. We'll flip it over, hit it from this side. Okay, I need to work on my transition here on these bottom colors. Always working away. So on the top, I'm working on the top of my carve here, and I'm working away from it. Working on the top, I'm working away from it. Whether you're working this way or working this way, starting at the top, because that's where your most your highest spot of your highlight color is, or of your dry brushing color. But like on these smooth parts here, definitely need some more color, because this dry brushing color, this is the color I want the cape to look. The color I base coated with is the shadow of that color. And yes, I do use a lot of paint. I waste a lot of paint probably because I'm a fast dry brusher. I don't like to spend a lot of time dry brushing. I'm not a fan of it. I wish there was a different way to achieve this, because dry brushing for me is hard. It's hard on my hands. It's hard on my brushes. But the look that you achieve from it is just, it's unmatched. And so I always start out dry brushing. Sometimes I do an antique stain before I dry brush, but I always dry brush first before I do pastels. And it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but it looks amazing. I'm really here to help you guys learn. If you want more videos like this, let me know. I know I do focus on pan pastels a lot, and that's just because I love them so much. But, you know, dry brushing is by far, you know, a tool that you need to learn. And if you guys want more dry brushing videos, you know, let me know that. I'm happy to provide those for you. If I'm working on a project, I can go live and you guys can do it with me, or watch it later. Okay, so I think I want to do, just pick up some. I'm going to look at my hat here. Definitely going to need I'm probably going to have to use a smaller brush in some of these spots I forgot about over here. So we'll just kind of hit the edge here. Got a lot of paint on our brush. Get about down here. Really want to focus on getting this cape done, because we're going to add some highlights to this. I really want some more of this light purple on here before I switch over, so bear with me 1 second. Okay, we're just really, I'm trying to just add some more of this light purple into some of these deep curves and crevices without taking away from the dark purple that I laid down already. Oh, my arm's getting tired. It's an arm workout, that's for sure. Okay, I need to come up here on the top a little bit more, add some more light purple here. Now on the tops of these cards, I definitely need some light purple in here, because there's not much of a, even though it's a shadow, there's not much curving going on here, so. Again, you want to make sure you get plenty of your color on your high spots along your edges here. Okay, feeling pretty good about this here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep using the same brush like we've been doing. Did I base coat her cape a dark purple or royal blue? The colors are posted at the top, but I use Dioxazine purple on the base coat of all of the purple parts of her. So when you go around and you want to do your hats, here you always want to start on your outside, because that's where you're going to have the most concentration of colors around your brim here. Again, if I was using a short flat brush, a bright, versus a flat, regular flat, which is longer bristles, that brush is not going to allow me to sweep that color up onto the hat, because there's no bend in these bristles. These short bristles, there's not a lot of bend, versus this brush has a lot of bend because it's so long. Imagine if you were using a long hair bristle broom to sweep your kitchen versus a short bristle broom. You're not going to get as much sweeping motion in the larger areas. Your brush isn't going to spread out. Your broom isn't going to spread out like, it does with these longer ones. So when you use the longer ones around an edge like this, it allows you to sweep, to pull that color up onto the dark, because what you want is you want a gradient. You are looking for a gradient here, right? Obviously down in this dark part of the hat here, because it's where the hat bends, I'm going to have a darker purple than up on the edge where my hat bends upwards. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so always starting at my edge, pulling that color just a little bit, sweeping up towards the midline. Okay, then once you get the edge all highlighted the way you want it, now you can come back on some of these higher spots. Like I've got a high spot right here where it kind of bends. So I'm gonna add some light purple here. Then I've got kind of a high spot right here. So let's just go ahead and I'm holding it in a straight vertical position, straight up and down. So that's allowing the bristles to just pick up the paint here and not in this little dip of the hat. Okay, same thing here. I'm going to do the same thing in this little dip of the hat. I've got a dip here where it bends, so I'm going to highlight on the top here. Again, I'm starting at the top and working away because the top is where my color is the brightest. So I want to start at the top where I have the most concentration of color and work away from that area. Okay, I'm going to hit this high spot here. I'll work away from it, pull a little bit of the color into the middle here. Okay, same thing up here. I only want to pick up the high spots of the hat. So I'm working, starting at the middle and working out. Always working away. Whether you're working top to bottom or bottom to top. Looking for that nice gradient transition of color here. Okay, and you will notice, I mean, we're working on a flat surface here. There's absolutely no texture on this hat. So you want to be very cognizant of how much paint you have on your brush, because if you walk up here and you get too much paint on your brush on a flat surface like this, you're going to have a big old mess and you're going to be upset. So Generally, like if I'm doing a flat surface like this, I'll load my brush up. I'll come back to my textured area first, because I know I might have a lot more paint on here than I want. So I'm going to come back here and I'm going to lose some of that paint here. Then I'm going to come up here where I don't have any texture. And even still, you can see that's just a little bit too much paint on there. So let's come down here and remove some. Hit my edges because I definitely need more color there. It's another place that you can check your brush to see if it has too much paint. I'm definitely going to be giving this lady away. If you guys are new to this channel or new to me, I have a Friends of Hope and Dimples page on Facebook. It's a private group. I give a lot of freebies away in that group. I give a lot of free workshops away. I give Bisque away. I do a lot of free fun stuff. If you're interested in possibly trying to win this, you can join that group or watch that group if you're already in it, because once I get this done, I'm going to post it as a giveaway. Hopefully I have it done by Friday, because Friday is usually my freebie Friday day that I like to give things away in there. So I don't know, I might do something different with this patch. I forgot there's little patches in here. I guess I can just paint some fun. I'm going to leave it purple and maybe paint it plaid or something with some other colors. And that might be a good place to practice plaid, because plaid is, you know, I've been wanting to do it for a really long time, and it's very stressful when I think about doing it anyway. I got laughed at, well, not laughed at, but one of my followers said I shouldn't be scared, and I'm like, but it's scary. It's definitely scary. So probably with a smaller brush, I would come back here and hit the front. I've got some of my, you can tell you're really hard on your brushes when the brushes are like breaking down. You have dust in your dust in your space. Okay, hit this shoe really quick. I'm gonna want some more. I was thinking I might want her hat lighter, but I forgot. We're gonna do some highlights real quick on there. And I don't spend a lot, like I said, I don't spend a lot of time on this part. I mean, I do try to do a good job, but usually one coat of my dry brush color, sometimes two. I'm not looking for perfection so much as just looking for a little bit of, depth in whatever I'm working on, like the boot here. I don't want it to just be plain purple. That's boring. While it would be cute, I'm sure, it's just not very fun to look at. So let's try to layer some different colors of purple on there so that it looks realistic. Okay. Definitely have to hit the top here, but I want to be pretty careful. I don't want to break the tip of the hat off again. It wasn't easy to get that to stick, to go back on. It was a clean break, thank goodness. All right. So that looks pretty good, I think. Right now, I'll add some highlight here. Go back and do this front because I didn't get the front of her cape very well right here. Okay, I'm going to pick up a little bit of white in this same brush. I'm looking for like a, I don't know, light lavender color maybe. Okay, I'm going to go around the edges of her hat again. Again, I'm working from the outside in. I want just a little tiny bit of that color to transition from the light to the light to the from the lightest to the light to the dark. If that makes sense. Just looking for a really nice groomed, sweeping, soft transition here. Okay, and then I also want to just hit the tops of these bends. I'm using very little pressure on my brush. I don't want this to be drastic. Okay, same thing up here. I'm going to hit the top of the hat with more of the light than the bottom because I'm getting the most light up here. This little pocket, this little pouch, not pouch, this little patch. Okay, and then also just the tops of these bends here. Need a little bit of a highlight on those. Come back here, I want to hit a little bit of a highlight on these. Okay. Flip it around, let's do the edge of this one. Just the high spot here. Okay, and then we'll just do the little patch, add a little bit of a highlight on that. Okay. I'm going to add just a slight little bit of color here. I'm going to add some more white to my brush. First thing I want to do is I'm going to hit the edge of the top of the cape here. Again, you want to be using a flat brush while you're doing this. A flat edge brush, not a bright brush, not a round brush, not a filbert brush. Okay, and then we're just going to pick up the tops, very light. I'm just going to pick up the very top, these high spots. Looking for a highlight here. Okay, just the tops here, and then of course the edges. Because again, we always have to remember that is we have to have a highlight around these hard edges. Because they are definitely getting a lot of light. You think about, you know, the top of this cape and the underneath part of the cape is very dark. So of course our top and our highlight edge is going to have a highlight, a brightness to it. So this way we're achieving a three-dimensional look. Three different shades of purple here is what we're doing. Always we're trying to achieve at least three different gradients, three different shades of whatever color that you're trying to use. In this case, it was purple. So, you know, I know that I need three shades of purple. Whether you mix them yourself or you buy three shades right out of the gate, however you decide. Okay, now here, like on some of these spots here, like it's sticking out farther because I have a bend here, I have a bend here. You can clearly see these are sticking out pretty far on these edges here. This is where they're getting the most light. So I'm going to come back with a second coat of this highlight color on these, just these high spots here. Here where her leg is bending, she's going to have, it's going to be sticking out farther than the rest of the cape. So we're going to need more light, more of a highlight right here. This spot's getting more light than the other parts of the cape because of the bend. This corner is going to have probably quite a bit because it sticks out pretty far and it folds. So we can add some more highlight here. Okay, over here. Hit these spots again one more time. Okay, so she's starting to come together. I'm going to hit the top of her boot. Obviously, she's getting the most light on the top of the boot here. So we'll just dry brush some highlights on just the top, just on these high spots here. And along our edge, because again, this is an edge, so we're always going to have a bright highlighter on the edge of our pieces. Whether you dry brush it on there or you use a white colored pencil, which I also do that at the very end. Work from the top. Definitely need to have more of the light on the top of the boot than on the bottom. Okay, let me hit these front spots here. Top of this boot. Oh, I've completely forgotten all about this spot over here. So let's just lighten this up some. Get my edge. I think I'm going to have to come back with a smaller brush on those spots there. That's okay. So let's get our highlight here and add a little bit more paint to my brush. Okay, nice highlight there. Do around here. Let's hit these high spots one more time. All right. Just add a little bit of the highlight right here. And then I can come back with my smaller brush and just hit the edge. I'm not going to worry too much about it because I'm going to shadow it with some pastels done, so. All right, I feel like that's pretty good for the purple. Just make this top really good. All right, she's starting to come together here. Rinse my brush. I generally keep 2 bottles or jars of water, or try to, a jar for rinsing my brushes, and then just a clean jar of water in case I get any acrylic somewhere I don't want it. I can just quickly get a brush with some clean water and wipe it off before it dries. Okay, so next I've got my orange here, and when I do her dress, I'm going to use a number 6 flat again. Wait, am I using the same brush? Nope. Okay, I'm gonna use a number 6 flat. I'm using the jack-o'-lantern orange for the top of her dress. And I like to load the brush up so that the paint comes, you know, halfway up here, because I want this brush to really lay the color down for me, and I don't want to have to work so hard. If you only use a little tiny bit of paint, you don't load it all the way from the brush, the paint isn't, you know, the brush is not going to work for you. You're going to be working the brush. So I'm going to always come and start on whatever my most highest spots are, just to make sure I don't have too much paint in my brush here. And this is probably going to take at least 2 coats for you guys to. Actually, let me add a tiny little bit of yellow to this paint. See how this lightens it up some. Kind of gives me a little bit more white in the orange, so maybe it won't take so many coats. So for a little around this area, probably I need to use a filbert. Definitely gonna add that yellow in there because that covered a lot better. Now, if you wanted it to be like a brighter orange, you would use like a bright yellow, like cadmium yellow or something. But I just used the deep ochre because that's the color I had on my palette. So if you want more of a candy corn look, then you would want to use a brighter yellow when you're mixing that. Okay, I've still got quite a bit of paint on my brush, but I'm going to try to work with it here because I'm using really light brush strokes. And I know it's going to take a couple of coats to cover up this because it's a very dark red orangey red. So I'm not going to worry too much about this first layer of this orange and having a little bit too much paint on my brush. So normally I would have, I don't know this mold. I had never seen this piece until I was shown it. But I get asked this a lot. What do I use? Have people fire stuff like this is a separate attachment. If I would have known that it was a separate attachment, I would have had him fire it separate, and then I would glue it on after because it's very difficult to get behind something like that without getting paint on the piece you're not trying to paint. So next time, or if I do another piece like this, I generally like to glue mine on after. That's just my preference. I find it's easier to do that way. Because it's, you know, it's pretty hard to get up underneath this space with that broom glued on there. Normally I would be working in the opposite direction, but I can't turn it upside down really and work this way because it's just gonna hit this. So I gotta just kind of try to maneuver around it. It's so weird when I see the colors on my computer screen, it looks so different than what is actually on here. I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't look ugly to you guys because it looks kind of ugly to me with the color that's on my computer right now. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh no, I got the purple. Ah! Oh man, see? I make accidents, you guys. It happens for sure. That must be a sign that I should switch brushes. I always look at things as a sign. Okay, let me drop this in my water because I don't want to. Dang it, now I can't use that brush again. I only have two of those. Okay. Change of plans, guys. Bear with me 1 second. All right, let's see here. I guess I'll switch to this number 4 filbert because I'm gonna do around her like breast area, so I guess I needed to switch to the correct brush anyway. So a couple little yellow more here. Okay. Remember, we want the most of our dry brush color up on top here because that's where we're getting the most light. So we're going to kind of work that natural shape, the round shape, and leave the dark on the underneath side. A little bit too much of the paint on my brush right there. So I'll let that dry for a minute and come back to that spot. Remember, we're always working from the outside in, guys. Never from the inside out. I'm gonna come here and start on my high spots. I know I've got a lot of paint in my brush, so just work it out right here. Let's see. So let's take a couple coats because this is a pretty dark red orange, so I'm going to take a couple passes to cover really well. If you're looking for more of a, you know, a yellowy orange, which was what I was looking for. I like the reddish, dark red, reddish color undertone, so that's why I base coated it with that dark shade of orangey red. Again, I'm using the filbert brush because I want to pick up the edges or the tops, the high spots, but I also want to be able to get down into some of those deeper carved lines like down in here where it's a high spot, but I also need a transition of color into some of those deeper cavernous parts of the dress. Always the top's highest spots are going to have the most concentration of color because that's where it's getting the most light. Just a little bit on the top here, the belly. I want to kind of leave that darker color underneath the breast area. We'll catch just this top part, but I want to try to leave that as dark as possible under there. Not getting much light there. Working from the top again, working from the inside out is going to give us that nice transition of color gradient from where it goes from light to dark underneath. Come over here and do a couple more coats right here, another pass. Let me see. Let me look at the questions. Blanca. Oh, this came from Eddie O'Neill, and he's in the original Addicted to Ceramics group. That's where I found him. And this piece was, all the stuff I got from him was cleaned magnificently and shipped to perfection. It was excellent. I highly recommend this seller. Very nice to work with. Had no problem sending me pictures when I asked for them before shipping, sent me pictures of the packing, sent me tracking information. I never had to worry about where my order was. Everything was exceptional. So highly recommend this seller. Highly, highly. I mean, the bottom even is just, you know, clean to perfection, which a lot of times I find people forget about the bottom. Or I find like bubbles in the clay. That happens a lot. So didn't have any problems like that. And in fact, when I did the unboxing video, I accidentally broke the tip of the pat off right here. And I didn't know it, but he messaged me after he watched the video and said that that piece was broken, and so I needed to go back to the box and find it. Otherwise, I would have never known, you guys. Because I didn't even notice it, to be honest with you. I was mostly looking at the seam and the bottom, so I really didn't even pay attention to the tip top part of the hat. Okay, so she's starting to really get some nice dimension to her. And again, I'm using that long flat brush. I'm using a filbert. I'm using a filbert on this area, a long brush filbert, long bristles, because I want those, the brush and the bristles to spread that paint around for me, like in a nice sweeping transition. I don't want any hard lines here. Now it's really getting very difficult to get up underneath this part, especially to where I can show you guys, keep working on the video so you can see what's actually happening here. So I'll just do the best I can. Now, you know, this looks really good without any pastels, but imagine how amazing and the dimension I'm going to be able to achieve when I come back and shadow, you know, all inside the dress and create and contour her face. And yes, you can absolutely stop here, you know, if you don't want a pastel, shade with pastels. And it doesn't have to be pan pastels, you guys. Any pastels you have will work. Do I use pan pastels? Yes. You guys know I love the pan pastels. I'm a proponent, big proponent for high quality art materials, except for dry brushes, however, because I just go through them a lot. But you don't have to use pan pastels. You can use any pastel you want, any pastel at all. It's just that added extra step. I feel like the pieces look incomplete until you've gone on that transition and added those additional shades, and you can even do highlights with pastels. But for the most part, I do the highlights with the dry brushing because highlights are a lighter shade than your original color. Like for me, jack-o'-lantern orange is the color I was looking for her dress. So I need a highlight color. Well, if you're trying to achieve a highlight, which is, the shade's quite a bit lighter than your original color, it's going to be very difficult to do that with pastels on a dark color like purple or blue or black or green, or even, especially reds, anything like that. It can be done, but it's going to take several layers of paint, several sprays, versus if you do your highlights with your acrylic paints when you're dry brushing, you can go back and accent those with your pastels should you choose to. I've got this light orange on top here. Do I want to go back and add a highlight with powder? Maybe, but probably not, because I'm going to do it with the paint. So just get a little bit down here underneath here. I'm going to come up from the bottom of the belly here because her belly's kind of chubby, so it sticks out a little. And I definitely need a highlight color here. I don't know who makes this mold. If you guys, is it a, I love the clay magic stuff, but I don't know who made this mold. Unfortunately, molds are not my forte. I don't know manufacturers and all that kind of stuff. I just buy what I think is cute and what I want to paint, which is usually a lot of clay magic. I'm a big clay magic fan. I love their pieces. Okay, let's see here. We'll do one more color, one more pass of this orangey yellow, and then we'll add our highlights on here. I appreciate that you guys are still watching. Hopefully you're enjoying this, and if you have any questions that I haven't answered, or you have a question you'd rather ask in private or anything like that, just let me know. I'm here for you. I am looking for some potential people to maybe do like a Zoom call with me so that I can ask you guys some questions. What kind of things would you like to learn from me? How can I better assist you in your painting goals and dreams? How can I help you achieve those? And just in general, if you have anything that you need help with and you feel like I can help you, whether it's learning how to package and ship, or maybe you want to learn how to price your goods properly. Maybe you want to learn about building your own website so you can sell your pieces there versus, say, like on Etsy, which you guys, if you've been following me for a while, know that I am not a fan of Etsy and do not recommend anyone selling there or buying there. If you want to know about that, you can message me. We can talk about that separately. But if you're a seller and the only way that you sell your products is on Etsy, I can't have my customers buying things through Etsy. So if you're a seller of ceramics and you're willing to invoice someone directly for a product that they'd like to purchase from you versus doing it on Etsy, then I will absolutely pass on your information to the people in my group or people that are taking my classes. But I don't buy ceramics from Etsy ever. I don't buy anything from Etsy ever. Wouldn't recommend you guys selling on Etsy. It's much more profitable for you to sell on your own website where you're not paying ridiculous fees to an outside company, and it's not financially worth it. You can absolutely advertise your website on Facebook and in some groups that allow promotion and things like that. You don't need to advertise to the whole world. Your clientele is already in these Facebook groups. You know, you don't need to go and spend exorbitant amounts of money on Etsy or any other website for that matter that's going to market your products on an algorithm basis to a bunch of people that you may not. Suppose you didn't put your hashtags in correctly. Well, then your product's not going to get in front of your client that you intend for it to get in front of. So don't recommend those outside companies. Invest in your own website. Your website is like your own brick and mortar store, okay? If you were going to have a brick and mortar store, would you give the keys to just anyone? Of course not. Well, why do we give the keys to our business and our products to Etsy or anyone else for that matter? Etsy is going to tell me what I can sell, to who I can sell. Any third party place, that's going to be the case. However, if you're selling from your own website, you control your market, you control who you sell to, you control everything about your business. No one else has the key to your store but you. If you're selling ceramics, whether they're unpainted or painted, you need to have your own website. Cannot stress this enough. If you're selling anything at all, jewelry, you know, it doesn't matter. You need to have your own website, which is your digital brick and mortar store. Only you have the key, and only you say what gets sold there, how much it gets sold for, how much fees you pay, which is basically just to host your website. I use Wix. It's very user friendly. I don't get any kind of commission or anything like that. I'm just letting you guys know what I use. Squarespace is also very user friendly. They both have templates that you can just drop and drag, plug your information right into it. And I'm here if you have any questions about that as well. Big proponent of you guys having your own place to sell your products, not a third-party outlet. All right, so she's looking pretty good, and I'm just highlight this just a tiny bit. Make sure we don't have any, nope, orange on the back. So now I'm going to go ahead and, if you would just, could you just bear with me 1 second? Let me grab a lighter yellow. I wasn't planning on using this yellow, but if I'm mixing with the deep ochre, that's not going to give me the brightness that I'm looking for here. So I'm going to grab cadmium yellow. Exactly what we were talking about. I'm going to keep using the same brush. I'm going to pick up some cadmium yellow here. Okay, again, you could absolutely have your own, you know, more colors, but we're going to mix. If you want to use a pre-mixed yellowy orange, completely your prerogative here. Just looking for like a much brighter orange, some more yellow. Okay, now I'm just going to very lightly, I'm going to hold this brush horizontal as possible here. I just want to pick up just the tops of those ridges, ripples of her dress. Okay, come here where there's got some high spots here. Definitely got some high spots here. here. Just simply do the top. Using very little pressure on the paintbrush. Come over here and hit these high spots here. Again, I'm using a filbert brush because I don't want to use a flat here. The flat will pick up the highlight spots of the texture, but it's not going to give me that gradient or that transition of color that I'm looking for. It's going to be a very sharp edge, and I don't want a sharp edge. That roundness of that brush, that umbrella shape, allows for that color to transition on a round shape object. So in general, if you're painting something that has a round shape, you want to use a round type of brush. Could I use a flat brush here? Sure, but again, I'm going to end up with a very hard line. I don't want that, so I'm going to work just on the top because obviously that's where we're getting the most light here. I'm going to hit the top of this one. Come over here and hit the tops here. I've worked most of the paint out of my brush now, so now I'm holding it in more of a horizontal position versus a vertical position. And I just need to reload my brush, some more paint in there. How are we doing on time? Oh, an hour and a half, holy cow. Let's see if I can finish this whole thing. At least I can get the front done. And then maybe I'll do another Facebook where we just do some shadows on her with pastels. That would be fun. I'm going to pick up a little bit more yellow here, and a little bit more paint on my brush. A little bit more here on the top. Very good coverage right here. She's looking so cute. Oh my goodness. I was just telling you guys earlier, if you're just tuning in, that I'm going to give this lady away when I'm all done painting her. Hopefully by Friday, but I don't know. It might take me a few days to get the pastels done on her. But I do quite a few giveaways on my personal Facebook friends group, my Friends of Hope and Dimples group. If you haven't joined that yet and you'd like to get a chance to win this cutie when I'm all done, you can join the group. It's just a place where people can post pieces that they've done either in the workshops, or really you can share anything you want in the group, but it's mostly created for people to post pieces that they painted either in the workshops that we do, or pieces that you painted and you learned something here or taking a class. We give away a lot of free stuff in the group, and it's just a really nice place to network with other people, and place you can find trusted sellers of bisques. I do buy a lot of bisque on Facebook, so I try to keep a place where people can go and ask questions about, you know, whether the seller ships well or whether they clean well or whatever. So if you're interested in that, you can check that group out, and maybe you'll win this cutie. She's gonna be so adorable. All right, so she's looking pretty good. However, I still want more highlights on her dress. So now I'm gonna pick up some white. Same brush. This is gonna give me a really light yellow. Now this time I am really just going to hit the high spots. Okay, so right up here. Just looking for kind of like a reflection on the dress. So right here, in these corners, and show it's bending quite a bit. Quite a bit of light on top there. Basically just where our bends are and our creases, we want to accentuate those. Go ahead and hit the top here because it's definitely got a lot of light on the very top. Using very little pressure on this brush. Go ahead and hit just the top around the very arch of the breast area here. Again, using very little pressure. I just want to pick up a very small fraction of paint here. Okay, I'm going to hit just the top here. It's a Kimball mold. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Rick, for letting us know that. I hate sounding dumb about molds, but you guys, I'm not a mold person. I don't pour molds. I don't own molds. I don't have anything to do with molds. I just buy stuff that I think would be cute to paint. So, all right. So you can tell now just by adding that hard highlight line there, it actually gives the effect of, I feel like that the dress is more animated. There's a lot more bends, hard edges. It just to me looks more realistic, right? So I'm gonna hit these. Anywhere that there's like a bend, it kind of needs a highlight. Okay, and then I'm going to turn her around. Obviously, we need a highlight here. I'm going to add a highlight on this part of the dress. Just kind of right up the middle there. Again, still using this filbert brush. It's really allowing me to sweep that color around really nicely. I might even hit like her belly right here, just on the underneath side. Maybe a little bit right on the top here. Very subtle. These high spots here. Always thinking about your light source, very important. I mean, at this point, we already know where our light source is, but we really need to focus on adding those highlights before you finish up, because the highlights are super important. All right, That's looking pretty good. I'm going to use a smaller brush to do around the hat, the trim on her hat, because I don't want to get any of that on the purple that I've already done here. So here is my brush. I'm going to grab a new paper towel. I'm going to grab a flat brush. What number is this? This is number 6. Okay, now on in this case, I'm going to use a regular, a bright flat brush. And if you've been watching the whole time, we talked about the difference between a bright and a regular flat. The regular flats are much longer bristles, and the brights, it's much shorter, stiffer bristles. So I'm going to do the broomstick here, and I'm going to use the short flat brush because I want the color to just pick up the top part of the texture. I don't want the color to go down into the deeper carved lines of the broom. So I'm going to pick up the yellow ochre. I base coated the broomstick part with honey brown first. Now this brush is much stiffer. So this brush doesn't allow you to get down into those deeper carved lines like the flat one does, the regular flat. Did you know that there was a difference between the 2 different style brushes? I think most people hear flat, they just automatically grab these short flat brushes, but I can have quite a bit of paint in this brush as well on this part because there's a lot of texture, so a lot more paint will make for less work for me as far as how many times I have to go over and do this. Might take 2 or 3 coats. But if you can leave more paint on your brush, then obviously it takes less time. Okay, and hopefully you can tell the difference in the brushes here because it's a huge difference versus using a bright or a flat. Even though they're both flat brushes, you get a completely different outcome when you use a regular flat versus a bright flat. Are we going to be able to finish this thing in 2 hours? Oh my gosh, I'm going to be so excited if we do. So again, this would be like, could I paint the back of the broom? I for sure could if it wasn't attached. But I mean, I guess no one can see the back anyway, but it's just more like I know I can't get back there, which is annoying. But you know, it is what it is. It's not impossible to do, and I'm not upset. I've just found that as I'm learning more and more about different molds, you know, I think some people tend to assume that just because it comes out this way that it was a mold that was like one piece, when in reality it can be 2 or 3 pieces that have to be attached. And so whether it's a hand or a spring stick or whatever, I have just started discovering for myself personally that I prefer to have them fired separately and then I can glue them on. That's just my preference. I know we talked about that earlier, but so same thing up here. I don't want to do the yellow on the hand here. I'm just going to continue using the same brush. me see if I got, yeah, you can really see like on the back where I couldn't reach the color back in there, but nobody will be looking at it from that angle, so it'll be okay. All right, so now that I've got my yellow on there, again, always working against the texture. It still looks really dark for you guys, so let me do one more coat of yellow here. Okay, so now I've got my broom color on there. Seriously, do not know why it's so dark. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this light yellow that I placed on here earlier, which makes these two yellows together. Using the same brush here. Now what I'm doing is I'm mixing my highlight color. So I've got my shadow, which was our base coat, the color I intend the broom to be, which is yellow, the deep ochre, and now we're going to add our highlight on there. So on my highlight, I'm going to highlight the top of the broom. Just the top over here. Where it starts to bend and goes, you know, towards the bottom where it starts to change shape here. I don't want to use my light down here. I just want to keep my light up on the very top. Same thing up here. Definitely going to want some on the tips of the, where it turns right here. It's going to want a light here. Now, I'm still not getting the dimension I want, which happens sometimes. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of white on that same brush. And I'm going to go again, hit just the top. That's the dimension I was hoping for. Okay, you can see, like, if we go down any farther, we don't want to go down there because that's where the shadows are. We want to stay up at the top where the highlights are. Come down a little bit farther here. And you can see we're kind of creating a highlight that's like a half circle shape. We're just doing this top part. Okay, then of course I also want to do the tips down here. Okay, I'm going to come up here, hit the top here. Still looking like I might need a little more contrast. So I think just right here on the top, pick up a little bit more white. Just hit the top right here. Okay, and then maybe just a little bit here. And probably on the tips of the bottom of the broom too. just a couple of these high spots. Okay, we're just kind of accentuating so you can see where it bends, because where it bends, we're going to have more of a highlight there. Naturally, where it bends, it's going to get more light right in that area. Oh, I forgot to do her hand all the way. Let's see if I can get her to. Go around the edge there. That highlight around our hard edge. Okay, it's looking pretty cute. The cat, I don't know. What am I going to do with that guy? I don't know. He's got to stay black, though. It's got to be a black cat. All right. Well, I think probably this is probably good for you guys today. It's going to take me quite a bit of time probably to do the cat and the violin. You probably don't want to watch me paint this whole entire thing. If you want to keep watching, I'll keep recording. I really like the way that looks. So let's see. I'm going to use this same brush and pick up some of the honey brown that I base coated with. And I'm going to use the same brush because the yellow and browns will go together. You know, obviously I wouldn't be able to use the same brush if it kind of wasn't in the same general family of colors. So I'm just going to lightly go across this broomstick part, this metal part that's keeping the broom together. Okay, and then also we've got to come up here. Again, I want to be using the short flat brush when I'm doing this part. So it'll take a couple coats of that honey brown for it to appear like a brown color here. Pick up a little bit more honey brown. To look a bit more brown than black, so do a couple passes here. Make sure you turn your piece upside down. You always need to turn it upside down and see what it looks like from the other side. Really easy to miss places if you're not flipping it upside down and checking it from every angle. Okay, it's probably good. That's 2 passes. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of white in my brush because I need a highlight still. This is giving me kind of like a light buttermilk color. So I'm just going to hit the top up here, getting the most light up here. Right on the very tip top. Right, especially on the bend there. Might add a little bit more on this bend. Definitely want to put a little more on the top here. Okay, hit this just a little bit more here. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Rinse this brush. Now, I want the cat to be black. I'm guessing that because you guys are still here, you want to keep watching, so we'll talk about the black on the cat. You could dry brush with like a light gray, but I'm going to use the purple. You could even use a blue, but I'm going to use the Dioxazine purple, which is what we started with. Get a little flat brush here. My number one, the tip came off of this. I'm not going to be able to use that one. Let's see. Use this number 2. So this says it's a bright flat, but I mean, it looks like a filbert to me because I've worn it down pretty hard. So I'm going to use this brush here to start. Let's see how we do. I don't want it to be I want it to be pretty subtle. I want it to be terribly drastic. I definitely want him to continue to be looking black and not gray or any other color. So the purple just kind of gives it a reflection without changing the shade of the black too much. I really can just do it on the top parts, you know, just to kind of give it a little bit of a reflective shadow. I'm using a very small brush because I just don't want to get, this purple on the violin part because I'm gonna have to dry brush that like a brown over the top of the black. And you really can't see this very well because they're two very dark shades. Actually, I'm gonna use my little scrumler brush. But you can work it in a round, circular shape. And you can really, I think, get a lot more color on there. I love this brush for things like apples and has a lot of roundness to it. What is that? This is really hard to see. Really just hitting the high spots here with a little scrumler brush. It is really difficult for you guys to see that at all, huh? Once I get this little bit of a This little tiny bit of color will give me just enough of a, just a little tiny bit of depth without changing the color, but I will go back and add a little bit of the lighter purple for some highlights. I'm just gonna do the front here so I can show you guys. I'll work on the back after when I'm on my own here. But I just want to show you how purple looks really good over black. You get one more little bit of purple here, a dark purple. Because I got some yellow on right here. I'm just going to keep working with that though, because I am going to use pastels, so that will be shaded with the pastels at the end. All right, so I've got kind of a little bit of a highlight color on here on the black. So now I can go and just take my lighter shade, the purple Pizazz, or you can even add white to your brush if you want. Let's just add a little bit of white, kind of get a lavender color here. And then you're just gonna go, you can just go and highlight some of the edges, the high spots. This little cheeks here. Using very little pressure. Come over his little eyes. Obviously the top of his head is going to be getting the most light. Right in the middle of his nose bone there. I want to have a little bit of a highlight there as well. Top of his eyelids. Tops of the cheeks. See why this Frumbler brush is so nice, because it's round, so you can just really get in on those round shapes really nicely. Okay, I'm going to get the top of his tail here. Top of his little belly. Body part right there, but I can't really get my brush in there very well. Tops of his feet. Look at this little kneecap here. So hopefully he still looks, like a black cat, but have some shades of purple mixed in. I'll put his little hand right here. I'll come back and do the tops of the cheeks right here. Maybe you want to do just around the edges of his little ears, because again, it's a high spot, so we're just going to use the same brush we're working with. Just catch the edge, holding it in a very vertical position. Her horizontal position. Okay, it's pretty cute. All right. want to go ahead and get around his mouth too, because we want to have some of those highlights showcasing his smile. Just want to get up underneath there. So you can't even tell that I had that yellow on there now. But if you want to go back and touch up before you dry brush, you can. I don't generally, depends on how bad of a situation it is, but I feel like for the most part it doesn't, you don't need to. You can cover it up with layers, which is just basically what we're doing. We're just layering colors. Flip them around, make sure we've got a nice highlight edging all around here. Get all the round spots. Oh, you can't even see what I'm doing because my hand's in the light. Oh my gosh, he's so cute. Let's just go ahead and put it over his nose too, because I don't know what I'm going to do with his little nose. All right, so he's pretty cute, still looking like a black cat. I'm going to just pick up a tiny little bit more white on my brush here. And I'm just going to hit the nose, top of the nose, and try to hit the eyelids. Definitely want to hit the tops of the ears here. Okay, maybe I'm even going to take this and just go over here. I can hit these high spots here with this brush. Just remember, I didn't really do too much dry brushing here. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more white to my brush. I'm going to hit just the top of the knee, just the top of the hand, top of the hand here, top of the tail. You can even go like down the edge of the tail here and do the top of the foot. I'm going to go ahead and do the bend in the elbow. Okay, I'm going to hit the top of the nose again. The top of the eyelids again. It's a lot, things go a lot, I feel like sometimes if you mix your colors, you get a better transition or gradient because you're using the same brush and you're blending colors together in the same family. So versus having like 2 or 3 or 4 different bottles of paint and colors or brands, if you just use the same brush and stay in the same color family, then you just get I feel like a nicer transition or a nicer, the colors tend to seem to go a little bit better together in my opinion. So I've got a pretty good highlight on his little cheeks there, do around the lips. I want to make sure that the tops of the cheeks are done really well because that's where we get the most concentration of light here. And then I'm going to do just right up the brow bone here, right up the middle. Okay. He's looking so cute. Oh my goodness. All right. Let's see. Let's catch the edge of this part of her dress here. A little bit highlight here. Since we kind of really didn't get in there very well. And probably I want to do a little bit more on the top of her shoe here. Just want to go along the edge there and kind of accentuate that carved line. How are we doing on time? 2 hours, 2 hours, 6 minutes. Let's see if we can get her done. I don't know. I definitely can't do the eyes. I mean, I can do the eyes, but I don't think we'll be anywhere near close to the 2 hour mark if we're doing eyes. Sorry, I think I got out of the camera view for there for a second. So I'm just kind of using this brush to kind of get into some of these little smaller spots that I couldn't get into with that larger brush. Add just a little bit more of a softer highlight here. And when you use the scrumbler brush, you can work it in circles in a circular motion. And that helps blend the color out a little bit better too. Just really adding some more highlights here on her hat. Just making some of these high spots a little bit lighter is just going to add more shape to the hat. So it's going to look a lot more bent and folded versus more kind of flat as it looked when we started. So you can see this scrubbler brush really, really blends. I mean, it really does a nice job. And these, I mean, I wear these down hard because they start out pretty round, and then by the time I'm done with them, they're very flat. So, but this is my absolute cannot live without brush for dry brushing. Princeton Scrumbler number 6. They also make a number 2 for smaller areas. Like I will use the number 2 on her little mole on her face probably. But you can see it just really, really blends nicely. All right, let me rinse my brush. I generally try to get most of the paint out just because it dries up in there really quickly, especially if you use the brush for a long time. So I'll clean out these brushes with brush cleaner after this class. But I just want you guys to know this is kind of how I make sure I get all the paint out of there, all that dried paint. Jay, will I be having another session using the pastels? I can if you guys want me to. I mean, if you want, I can video, I can record for 10 hours. I can do a Facebook Live. You guys want me to just keep doing pastels? I'll just keep working. You just let me know what you want to do. I'm looking for my number 2 scrumbler. Here it is. This is what they look like brand new. So you can see how they can get pretty worn down there. So on her little mole. She have two moles? Is that a mole too? Might be too big. Let me just see. I need my little tiny. This even seems too small. Let's try it with the number 2. I'm gonna grab a little bit of black. Oh, I just realized I haven't done her hair yet either. Oops. I get a small brush for that. So I'm gonna just pick up a tiny little bit of black here. I'm just gonna add a little black mold here on the face. Remember, always flip it upside down. You want to make sure how it looks from the underneath side as well as the top. How are we doing on time? 12. Okay. So I think what I'll do, you guys, is I'll finish up the dry brushing part. I need to let my dogs outside, and I have another dog coming between 1 and 2. I have a dog sitting business. Most of you guys know that. So I think what I'll do is I will go ahead and finish the dry brushing part and do another live for just the pastels. So it'll be two separate events. But I'll do it this afternoon, so I'll just take a break, take care of my animals, and then come back and we can finish working on this lady. A little mole here. That one is going to be looks like there's one on the top of her nose too. So that is pretty tiny for this brush. I have to come back to that. Okay, so since I've already used black here, let me go ahead and put a little bit of purple on this brush. To get more purple. I'm going to use the the lighter purple because I've got the black in here. So let's just get a little bit of a highlight color for her hair. Okay, make a mess. I'm going to get up and do her hair under here. So we'll just use the same brush. Kind of allows me to get up in there. It's around her head is round. Her hair is kind of round, obviously, because it's going around her face. So we want to use a round brush. Just adding some highlights to the black hair here. This is really going to be hard for you guys to see all of under here. Again, I'm using the purple Pizazz for the highlights on her hair. here. So we've got a nice gradient of purple black here, like that. So now we're gonna pick up a little bit of white because we need to add some highlights. Oh, let's do the back really quick. This brush is probably too small for this area, but since I'm already working with it, I'm just gonna keep going here. Don't need a lot. I just need something to accentuate the black. So I'll pick up some white on my brush now. I do a lot of mixing with just white, guys, so always have white and black on hand at all times. A little bit of white here. And then I'm just going to hit the ends of her hair. Just around the ends. Pick up some of the high spots. Okay, flip it around. Some of these high spots here. Flip around the back. Just catch some of the high spots, but really we want to do the ends more than anything. Because the ends are where you're getting the most light. So really we can just go along the ends of her hair here. This is the number 2 scrumbler that I'm using, Princeton scrumbler. I get these at Michael's, but you can get them on Amazon or wherever you get your craft supplies. I'm sure that they sell these Princeton brushes. Okay. It's looking good. All right, let's see, what else do we need here? We need to do the violin. And I'm probably gonna leave the socks. I paint some fun polka dots or something on those. Rinse this brush. Got paint up into the metal part of the brush. Try not to do that. That's what ruins brushes. Okay. So we'll do the little violin here. Probably gonna use honey brown because I would like to use that color. So I need a small flat brush for this. Bear with me 1 second here. What I need is wet, so go to this one. This is a number 1. It's pretty small, but it's a tiny little area. This tiny little violin here. So we'll just try to get the edges mostly and the cords. This is a number 1 that I'm using. Number 1 short filbert. I would prefer to use a short flat, but I don't have one that's not wet with water, so we'll make do with what we have here. Mostly you want to make sure you get around the edges. Working, oops. Hold on. Well, I guess that won't really matter because of the pastel part, but maybe I can just get it off here. Crisis averted. Okay. All right, this lady is just about done, you guys. So we will finish her up here, take a break, come back in a little bit and do the pastel part for you guys. Okay, it's pretty good, I think. Might do one more little bit up around the top here. Oh, I still have to do the back of the kitten too before I can. I guess I could just do the pastels on the front for you guys. All right, so once I've got my first color on there, we'll go ahead and add our highlights. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white in my brush. I'm going to hit just the top of the what do you call these things? The cords, the strings. I want to try to work against the grain so you're not getting that color in between there. And then of course want to go around the edges on the top of the stick here. Go around the edge here. Flip them around. Do the underneath edge. Okay, and I pick up a little bit more white. And go over my stick and my strings one more time. Maybe around my edges just one more time. Okay, that's a pretty good place to stop, I think. I'm probably going to paint the eyes before I do the pastels. I don't know. No, I better wait and do the eyes last. Okay, guys, keep on the lookout for later this afternoon. I'm going to take the break, clean up, and come back to do pastels with you guys. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and see you in a little bit.